Welcome to the CondoVultures.com podcast with your host, Peter Zalewski, a Miami real estate broker, Wall Street consultant, and expert witness. This podcast is focused on identifying real estate buying opportunities in the South Florida condo market of Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. The CondoVultures.com podcast is not authorized by the South Florida real estate industry and will most likely annoy many of the region's talking heads. This podcast will feature straight talk and salty language that could be offensive to some. Please remember that past investment success does not determine future gains, especially in South Florida's volatile condo market. For more information, please visit CondoVultures.com. Don't buy a South Florida condo, discounted or distressed, before taking a Condo Vultures correction tour. CondoVultures.com offers weekly bus and walking tours that focus on educating buyers on the how-tos of identifying discounted condos, analyzing the opportunities, and purchasing units. Every tour attendee receives a list of all condo projects in a particular market, a market assessment handout, and unmatched expert analysis. For more information on the condo correction tours, please visit condovultures.eventbrite.com.
This is Peter Zalewski of the Condo Vultures podcast. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. And I wanted to alert you that if you have a property that you're looking to sell in the Tri-County, South Florida area, I would encourage you to reach out to Jenny Cortez, a licensed real estate broker with cvrrealty.com. She's my partner. She's been in the business for north of 15 years. More importantly, she knows the market. She knows how to get a deal done. And she also realizes that it's more important to get a price that you can accept and sell the property rather than to hold firm on some price that's never going to be achieved and ultimately languish on the market. So if you're looking to do a deal that you want a skilled expert who can help you sell a property, reach out to Jenny Cortez at 305-865-5859, 305-865-5859, or visit her website, cvrrealty.com. Welcome to Miami Reporters Roundtable podcast. I'm your host, Peter Zalewski from Condo Vultures. If you're tuning in this podcast, you're going to hear a conversation by current and former journalists talking about some of the biggest stories that occurred within the last week. The premise of this podcast is to cut through some of the fluff, some of the hyperbole that exists in the real estate market and give you, the audience, an idea of what might really be going on behind the scenes. Who is the podcast made for? Made for developers, made for lenders, made for buyers, sellers, investors, and even gadflies or anybody going to holiday parties. You need something interesting to say. Who knows? Maybe we're the podcast for you. We're probably going to be kicking around some ideas, some concept that you're not hearing on the street. So we just might be the podcast for you. There are four of us on this podcast. I am the presenter. I handpicked 6 articles. I sent 2 articles off to the other 3 journalists, asked them to give them a read, and then I'm going to ask them to comment after the original or the initial comment. Then we're going to go ahead and kick it around. Before I go ahead and introduce the journalists, let me throw out to you. If you have any comments for us, if you like us, you dislike us, you want to criticize, you want to compliment, you can get us on X, which is formerly Twitter. Get us at Miami RRP, which stands for Miami Reporters Roundtable Podcast. The other thing I want to throw out there to you is if you like what you're hearing, you like what we're doing, go ahead and subscribe and also like us. It'll help us with the algorithms. Podcast is available on video as well as audio. You should be able to get it virtually anywhere. And then final tidbit before we go ahead and introduce all of the members of the podcast this week. We look at our journalists, much like Marvel looks at its superheroes, as people who are special. So as a result of that, what we have done is we worked out an arrangement with a drop shipment company where basically we will take our journalists who we look at superheroes who can cut through the fluff and give you the straight talk. And we're now selling merch. So if anybody wants to pick up any merch, whether it is a coffee mug, it is a t-shirt, it is a welcome mat, or even a shower curtain, you can buy any of that product of all of our superheroes. Simply go to condovultures.com, look for the merch tab, click on there, and you'll be taken to the drop shipment company. So all that being said, let's go ahead and introduce the journalist this particular week. We have a gentleman who was a journalist for over 25 years, who wrote about banking, finance. He was an editor. Right now, he's a public relations marketing firm. It's called Gruss Communications. No one else but John Gruss. If you want to follow John or you want to comment to John on X, which is formerly Twitter, get him at John Gruss, JeanGruss. And if you want to check out his website, go to GrussPR.com, GRUSSPR.com. Mr. Gruss, what's going on? Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much, Peter. I spent a few days with family in New Mexico, also known as the land of enchantment. And now I'm back in Miami in the land of announcements.
Well, that's why we have the podcast to cut through those announcements and let the audience know exactly what's going on. Who else do we have on the podcast this week? We have a gentleman who was a journalist for over 20 years. We found out last week he was actually a longshoreman before he became a journalist. When he was a journalist, he wrote about white collar crime, did business stories, and he also did restaurant reviews. Right now, he does consulting. His name is John Fakler. You want to follow John on X, which is formerly Twitter. You can get him at JT Fakler, JTFAKLER. What's going on, Mr. Fakler?
What's going on, Peter? Glad to be back on the unauthorized podcast. Happy Thanksgiving.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving to you, Mr. Fakler. Mr. Fakler, I don't want to go too long in this, but, for this season, and we're in episode 16, prior to the NFL season, we're in Miami Dolphins territory. You are a New York Jets fan. You're in enemy territory. We heard a lot about how great the New York Jets were going to be. It just so happens the New York Jets played the Miami Dolphins just a few days ago, and it was really one-sided, and it did not go in favor of the New York Jets. It went in favor of the Miami Dolphins. You want to provide any kind of comment, assessment, analysis for everybody who's been following the podcast for all 15 previous episodes?
Well, I'm a 50-year Jet fan, so I'm not going to give up my colors just yet. The season's still got a couple of games. Give me a couple of games before I decide to quit and hang it up.
All right. Fair enough. Well said, Mr. Fakler. And who else do we have on the podcast this week? We have a gentleman who's making his maiden voyage, his debut on the Miami Reporters Roundtable podcast. He's been a journalist for close to 40 years, worked at a variety of different publications around the South Florida area. Right now, he is over at the Key Biscayne Independent, which is a nonprofit journalism startup. And it's someone else but John Pacenti. If you want to get a hold of John, you can follow him on X, which is formerly Twitter. Get him at JPACENTI. What's going on, John? Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. Just getting back into the flow of thing after Thanksgiving. I caught that bug that's going around, so I'm finally feeling almost 100%. But I just for those who don't know me, I've worked for the Palm Beach Post. I've worked for the Daily Business Review. I've worked for the Associated Press. Much of the last decade, I've been in the investigatory area. I was an investigative journalist, and I ran the investigative team at WPTV in West Palm Beach. And now I am working for a company called Miami Fourth Estate because we are trying to reinvent the way journalism operates. As you may know, hedge fund journalism is not working. And because of that, and because of staff cuts at newspapers, they have withdrew coverage from municipalities. So our MO in Key Biscayne is kind of our incubator, and we hope to be moving into Liberty City soon and into Miami as well, is to kind of do a micro local. And it's certainly been a sea change for me, but it is exciting. It's to be in this nonprofit world. It's something new. I've never had to ask for donations before, but that was something that was a new experience, I guess you could say. We had our big donation drive about a week ago, and but we're doing okay. And Key Biscayne is like this little crazy little town with all kinds of sordid news, and just really been keeping me busy, surprisingly busy.
John, we've used a lot. We've referenced a lot of the stories from Key Biscayne Independent through the course of the season. We're always citing it. We're referring to it. Seems like you guys are doing some really good work. Anybody who's watching the podcast maybe wants to go ahead and provide some sort of contribution or donation to fight the good fight. Where would they go? Would they go to the website, or why don't you give the audience an idea?
Yeah, right there. Absolutely. Right there on our website is a donate button, and we make it really easy. We've been trying to get somebody to donate a vehicle to us, a clunker. That hasn't worked out yet.
Well, John, I can tell you over the course of this season, Mr. Fakler's had his car in the shop. He's had a bunch of problems with it. He got he got into it with a few of the mechanics. He finally got it fixed. Mr. Fakler, your car is fixed. Any chance you might want to donate it over the Key Biscayne Independent? Anyway, and by the way, if anybody wants to reach out to the web or go to the website, kbindependent.org.
Well, listen, when John said that about donating a car, it was the first thing I thought about was my Jeep. So If I have any more issues with it, I'll certainly be willing to donate it to a great, worthy cause, fighting the good fight.
And
Yeah.
and just to follow up to that, John, does the car have to run, or can he simply have it towed there? Okay.
No, it does not have to run. It's the donate a clunker.
Donate a clunker. Fantastic. So, why don't we go ahead? We're going to get into our 6 stories. Before we do that, let me just throw out our sponsor. Sponsor for this particular episode. This is the only time you're going to get an ad. It's actually my real estate brokerage. It's called CondoVulturesRealty.com, CondoVulturesRealty.com. We do consulting, we do buy-side brokerage, and we also do expert witness. So if you're suing somebody, you need somebody on your side, your numbers add up, or maybe someone in my firm can help you out. Again, CondoVulturesRealty.com. So that being said, let's go ahead and get into this story. We're going to start off with John Gruss. John, this is the piece that comes out of the Miami Herald. I'll read you the headline for a couple graphs. Then I want you to go ahead and provide some comments. Here we go with the headline. Hollywood Beach's grand lady needs a lot of help if she's going to reach 100. And Hollywood is a city located in the Tri-County, South Florida area. It's in Broward County. It's north of Miami and it's south of Fort Lauderdale. And it's a town or a city that actually fronts the Atlantic Ocean, both on the Barrier Island as well as the mainland. So here we go. John Gruss with the first couple graphs, and I want you to comment. One of the first things 96-year-old Barbara Hogan did when she got her first paycheck from working at First National Bank of Hollywood in 1946 was to go to Hollywood Beach Resort Hotel. And here's a quote from Miss Hogan. They had beautiful shops out there, and I bought a pair of shoes. I thought I was somebody, she said with a chuckle. She now lives in Tennessee, close to her daughter, but she still has memories of the place that she visited way back in the day. The Hollywood Beach Resort Hotel has seen better days in nearly 100 years. Behemoth property sprawled along Ocean Drive in Hollywood was once considered the largest economic engine of Broward County and played a pivotal role in World War II. Clive Taylor, president of the Hollywood Historical Society, said, and here's a quote from Clive. Clive says, the Topin family that owned it kind of switched their business model and made it a convention hotel, Taylor said. So anything that ever happened in this area was important or of any kind of significance that needed the right backdrop or meeting space. It happened at the Hollywood Beach Hotel. Mr. Gruss, the story goes on to say that this Hollywood Beach Hotel, which was, it was the granddaddy of hotels in Hollywood. It was put up by the founder of the city of Hollywood, a gentleman called Young. Through the course of time, it actually served for a hospital. It had some other purposes, but as of late, it's really turned into one of these timeshare situations. We know what's going on with insurance. We know what's going on with condo fees. We know how hard it is for some of these older buildings basically to abide by the new legislation that went into place after the collapse of the Champaign Tower South in Surfside and the Barrier Island in Miami-Dade County. Then, Mr. Gruss, why don't you give us your take on it? Weigh the property and its location versus sort of the historical aspect of this, this grand dame or grand lady, as the headline says, for the city of Hollywood. What's your take, Mr. Gruss?
Yeah, well, I've written a lot about these hotels, grand old hotels that were in disrepair and brought back to life. The Vinoy in St. Petersburg, the Floridan Hotel in Tampa, the Don Cesar in St. Pete Beach, when I was working on the West Coast for West Coast newspapers. And, they're really, really difficult to do. And they need a lot of financial incentives from the municipalities. They basically need to be subsidized for them to be redeveloped because they're just so difficult to do. And the fact that this hotel was broken up into timeshares makes it even worse. There's nothing worse than a timeshare situation. It's just a real estate abomination. This is very difficult to do. And you got to have a developer with deep pockets. And these buildings always hold surprises. They're very uneconomical to restore. And unfortunately, it looks like this one might not make it because, it just requires a huge financial resources and incentives. So my guess is it won't happen.
Okay. For the roundtable, just kind of throwing it out there really quickly. Palm Beach County has the Breakers. That was a hotel built by Henry Flagler back in the day when he brought his train down. You have the Biltmore in Coral Gables. You had the Diplomat, which was in Hollywood. That has since disappeared. Other than this Hollywood Beach Resort Hotel, is there anything else in Broward County? And if so, and if not, why? What is it about Broward County? Is it simply doesn't care about its history? It doesn't have the financial wherewithal in terms of the governmental leaders as well as the locals? Or what would be the takeaway? Anybody at the roundtable want to throw something out?
Well, I'm trying to think of another hotel in Broward County, and fact is that, that unlike the Breakers and the Biltmore, they let this facility go into disrepair, correct? I mean, it's beyond it's beyond repair right now. It needs to basically kind of almost be brought down to the studs and rebuild. I thought it was interesting, this timeshare element, but I mean, we had a co-op in Delray Beach, and it fell into disrepair, and it was a boon for those owners. They were eager to sell, and now it's going to be another McMansion, a multi-million-dollar McMansion, on the beach there. One thing that I found interesting, and I agree with Mr. Gruss, that it's not going to happen, is that there's already litigation. It seems like with these big projects that people who are not getting a piece of the pie, then they just sue. You see this in Miami. I mean, you see it, with what happened with Marine Stadium. You see it what happened with the Rickenbacker Marina and the Rickenbacker project. And then municipalities get kind of gun shy. They don't want to, think about even subsidizing because it's all involved in litigation, and it just kind of just sits there for years or even a decade or more before anything could get done. And that's what I see this thing kind of just being a black hole there.
A black hole, unfortunately. So we'll have to see what happens going forward. Let's go on with story number 2. Story number 2, we're going to go to John Fakler. John Fakler, this is a story coming on Miami Herald. I'll read you the headline for a couple graphs, and I want you to comment. Here we go with the headline. Rusty Pelican owners are opening restaurant in a Fort Lauderdale park. Anybody knows what the Rusty Pelican is? It is a restaurant that is located on an island right off of the mainland of Greater Downtown Miami. It's on the way over to Key Biscayne. And what the restaurant's known for is it's effectively a 2-story building, but it fronts the bay and it fronts the beautiful skyline of Greater Downtown Miami. People go there. It does brunches. It does all kinds of events, celebrations, things like that. So now this group is trying to go up into Fort Lauderdale. So, Mr. Fakler, you spent a lot of time living in Broward County, so I figured you'd be the perfect person for this. So let me go ahead and read for a couple graphs, and I want you to comment, Mr. Fakler. The owners of the Rusty Pelican restaurant near Key Biscayne are expanding to a riverfront spot in the up-and-coming downtown Fort Lauderdale. Specialty Restaurant Corporation will bring a new restaurant at the Hyzanga Park. According to the company in Fort Lauderdale Downtown Development Authority, Hyzanga Park, named for the late owner of the Miami Dolphins' Blockbuster Video, is in the first block of East Los Olas Boulevard on the New River, across from the Fort Lauderdale Art Museum, and walking distance in the street's bustling retail and restaurant district. And the story goes on to say, the restaurant's part of a $50 million investment to renovate the 3.6-acre site, also known as Hyzanga Park. Despite the Rusty Pelican's ownership, the new place won't carry the well-known name, which graces restaurants on Biscayne Bay and Tampa Bay. The new restaurant will be named Sweetwaters, a concept company first tried to launch along the Miami River. Sweetwaters will replace an amphitheater at Hyzanga Park. The 3-story, 12,700 square foot restaurant will have an additional 5,800 square feet of outdoor space. Mr. Fakler, my question to you is, Fort Lauderdale is very distinct. It likes to play it off like it's separate from Miami. But I will remind you, there was an open air mall that was very similar to Coco Walk in Miami. There's now currently a place called The Wharf, which is mimicked or mirrored after the wharf that we have in Miami. And now we have Rusty Pelican going up that way. Mr. Fakler, why don't you give us your take on it? Rusty Pelican, A, is it needed in downtown Fort Lauderdale? And B, is Fort Lauderdale simply taking the ideas of Miami and trying to incorporate it into what they do, or it just reflects that maybe they're running out of ideas as to what's hip and what's cool? What say you, Mr. Fakler?
Well, what's interesting about this particular situation is this is the group, the Rusty Pelican group. It's not the unit. What they're proposing to open in Fort Lauderdale is called Sweetwater. Now, it's a concept that was originally reported on by the Herald they had signed a lease for waterfront property on the Miami River in 2021. Some reason it didn't materialize. That particular mall now, I believe it hosts a Chick-fil-A, which is not exactly upscale. Although I love the chicken. And that's the first question I have, because they never really explained it. I went to their website, what Sweetwater means. This particular group has restaurants and bars all over the country, California here. They have a Rusty Pelican in Tampa. All right. They got one in Miami. So why are they not naming this one in Fort Lauderdale? Just call it the Rusty Pelican in Fort Lauderdale. Apparently this park where they are going to renovate and have the restaurant, Heisinger Park it's called, was originally designed for office workers, because don't forget, there was a lot of office workers there. They needed a place to go. But I guess with all the remote working now, office spaces are plenty. So they're redesigning this whole concept to cater to the many thousands of apartments in the area. So now they're moving the concept to, okay, we want this as a destination, restaurants, shops. I mean, they've already got one with the riverfront in Fort Lauderdale. So I'm not really sure, exactly what's at play here. And again, is this whole idea going to go, what happened in Miami? I mean, was there an issue with the lease itself? Was it too expensive? Why did that go sideways? Because there was never any follow-up to the Herald story. So I don't know really what happened with that.
And Mr. Fakler, just a follow-up question before we go on to our next piece. You're somebody who lived in Broward for quite some time. People I speak to are from Fort Lauderdale. I've been down here quite some time. They're very confident about who they are, their personality, and what Fort Lauderdale is. Why do so many restaurant or concepts from Miami? Why do they go to Broward County? Is Fort Lauderdale the little brother, or are they actually strong enough to stand on their own? Speaking from a Broward perspective, Mr. Fakler.
I think they're strong enough to stand on their own, but they've always tried to differentiate themselves from Miami, and that may be why they have this new concept and why the name and not Rusty Pelican. Maybe they don't want to be associated with it for some reason, even though it's the same group. But yeah, I think they can stand on their own. I think there's the Fort Lauderdale riverfront is pretty successful. They haven't had crime issues, for example, as Miami has had. They have a very similar mix of restaurants and destinations as this Heisinger Park is proposed. So yeah, I think they could. Think they could stand on their own. They don't need. I mean, I don't see what the problem is of using the Rusty Pelican brand. And I'm not sure exactly why the Sweetwater, which I always thought was ironic, Sweetwater on the Miami River, it's kind of an oxymoron. But
Sweetwater means simply freshwater. You're saying, why are you saying it'd be an oxymoron for?
Well,
the Miami River?
Not exactly known. The Miami River is not exactly known as clean. I mean, it's, but that's just my. It's just my opinion.
That is a perfect transition for story number 3. John Pacenti, we're going to go to you with story number 3. This comes out of the Key Biscayne Independent. This is a piece you wrote, so you might not be able to comment, but you can provide some insight as to what goes on. I'm going to read the headline, first couple graphs. John, then I want you to comment. Headline, Moss asked that let it flood option be studied in Big Dig plan. And here we go, first couple graphs. In an effort to leave no stone unturned in getting the lowest price possible, engineers are being asked to study what might be called a let it flood scenario for fighting rising seas and persistent street flooding in Key Biscayne. Anybody doesn't know Key Biscayne, it is a municipality located on an island just east of Greater Downtown Miami. You get there through the Rickenbacker Causeway. And here we go. Story continues to say, the newest option, which came at the request of Councilmember Brett Moss, would allow for so much street flooding that only emergency vehicles could traverse village streets at the peak time of the deluge. The deluge. Excuse me. Streets would be filled with as much as 14 inches of water, not to exceed 12 hours. To be clear, the bargain basement concept wasn't recommended by village staff. It's just another what if to be considered before a January vote on the next step of the Big Dig projects, which have been delayed for months. Wow. John, are you saying that the rising sea level, one of the options being considered is just basically let all hell break loose? And then we'll figure it out after the fact. So why don't you walk us through this?
So let me, I know this is I've written many stories on this Big Dig. Okay. So basically, every time the sky sneezes in Key Biscayne, the streets have significant flooding. They have an outdated, gravity fed, stormwater release system, and they want to replace it with a pump-driven system. Which and so when they went to the village council, and they said, well, how much flooding do you want? They said, oh, we want no flooding. They said, well, that's going to cost $310 million. And they're like, what?
Right.
So now they're like, well, now what if we have it like maximum flooding? We have another council member who said, well, why don't we just put bigger tires on emergency vehicles, and then it could be like up 8, basically an ocean, and you could just go through the streets. The concept is that the storms that will dump this amount of rain are infrequent, and that we should consider them like snow days, that residents can hunker down for 24 hours, and then, the streets won't be able to be used until the waters recede. There's a lot of moving parts to this big dig. It reminds me of on The Sopranos, when Tony Soprano was talking about Hurricane Katrina, and he goes, we got to get down to New Orleans. They're minting Krugerrands down there. Because and so there's a lot of money. People who control the purse strings in Key Biscayne are going to be doling out a lot of money for this project. And there is a lot of characters circling and trying to get, hoping to be able to swoop in and maybe take control of those purse strings. But in the meantime, they're trying to figure out how to lower the price, because it's $310 million is too high. I mean, they're good at getting. I mean, they took out $100 million bond. They passed $100 million bond measure. That's going to be, but that doesn't. They're getting money from the state. They're getting money from the county. They're getting grants, all over the place. But they have to come to some kind of decision on what is acceptable. Now, let me just tell you that 2 weeks ago, the rain, that was 6 inches, 7 inches. It was chaos on the island. I mean, it was, it was like an ocean, and with sea level rise, right now, depending on the tide, they have to wait for the tide to go down, because because it's a gravity system. So if the tide's up, water's going to stay on the streets. So it stays on there until the tide goes down, and then the water can go somewhere. But it's a pretty bad situation regarding the flooding on Key Biscayne.
No, John. One follow up question. I just did some rough math. You said $310 million roughly. There's about 14,500 people who live in the municipality of Key Biscayne. Just doing it ballpark, it's about $21,400 per citizen. So it sounds like a lot, big number. Doesn't sound like that much, little number per se. But what I'm really wondering is this simply a negotiating ploy? Throw out some crazy ass number, and then all of a sudden, when you come up with something else, it doesn't seem as bad.
It could be. I think, like I said, that some people would say that it wasn't really thought out by this particular council on, when they wanted the Rolls Royce. Yeah, give us the Rolls Royce. And they said, well, the Rolls Royce is going to cost you. And they're like, oh, yeah. And so now they're kind of looking for, I don't know, a Chevy Malibu. And a Chevy Malibu can get you from point A to point Z, So they got to decide what to do here, and that's going to happen in January, and because they got to get shovels in the ground, because this situation is, needs to be rectified, but also because this is what this current council campaigned upon. We campaigned for the bond measure, campaigned for the infrastructure project. And to tell you the truth, I don't know when the last time you were on Key Biscayne, but it's like kind of like architecturally wise, it's like going back into 1985, right? Their shopping malls are getting outdated. They're going to have to do something sooner or later. And, they're one big significant storm away from really having a reckoning, in my opinion, because these I mean these shopping centers are not going to withstand like I don't know, even a category 1 or a category 2 hurricane.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you, John. Fascinating story. Story number 4, let's go on to Jean Gruss. Jean, this is a story that's coming out of thestreet.com, which is a financial publication. Basically, it writes about Wall Street, writes about economic issues. I'm going to read the headline for a couple graphs. Mr. Gruss, and I want you to comment. Here we go with the headline. There's one huge thing employers can do to get workers back into the office, is the headline. Now, first couple graphs. For about a year now, employers have been making the push to get workers they sent away during the pandemic to come back into the office. Tech companies, many of whom downsized immensely this year, have been more heavy-handed with their approach. Last month, Amazon reportedly told its employees that if you don't return to the office like it is mandated, then your job promotions are on the line. And here is a quote from an internal document that was leaked. The internal document says, if your role is expected to work from the office 3+ days a week and you're not in compliance, your manager will be made aware and VP approval will be required. Mr. Gruss, I bring up the story not so because of work from home versus, and just the whole conversation that went on, but more so about office space, more so about rentals. Many times during the course of this season, we talked about 55,000 new rentals that are going up and have been developed in the Tri-County, South Florida area. There's a lot of concerns about how office space will play out. And then the retail space that basically serves the office employee. Now that you see a story like this coming out that's saying basically corporations want their workers in the office 3 days a week. That would mean some of these work from home people would basically have to weekend in Miami, the ones who were occupying the space, the ones who were paying big rents, doing everything they can. And now they would have to effectively go home, fly back. Maybe it's good for Miami International Airport. But Mr. Gruss, what's your take on it? Have we seen the end? Are we seeing the end of the work from home? And what will that mean to all of our real estate sectors, whether it be retail, or the office, and or residential in the Tri-County, South Florida area, which has had legendary growth since the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that a lot of companies are coming to the conclusion that their employees are just not as productive working from home, and so that's why they want them back in the office. But they've let the cat out of the bag, basically, because now all these people are used to working from home. They're like, hell no, I don't want to go back to the office.
Right.
Get all dressed up and sit in traffic for an hour and get back and do it all again after work, So I think there's going to have to be some incentives. And I think the story points that out to get people to come back. One of them is higher pay, which is, sort of a no duh kind of thing. But actually, when I did a stint in Washington, D.C. for 5 years, and my employer at the time, Kiplinger, the personal finance publications, actually subsidized our parking, and they subsidized our use of the public transportation of the metro. They actually would give us, $100 a month in subsidies for transportation. And, I think that went a long way to making the commutes, a little less, less of a burden for employees. Because now, if you're sitting in traffic or traveling for an hour just to get to the office, and you've been working from home and it's been, super easy. You haven't had to buy any work clothes. You can go pick up the kids right after when they get off from school. And now you have to schlep back into the office. You got to have some carrots here to lure them back. And of course, the legendary traffic nightmare that is Miami. There's got to be some reason for you to be stuck on the interstates or the highways to get into downtown or Brickell or wherever it is that you work.
Mr. Gruss, just a follow-up question. You've written about banking, and I guess my question to you is, how does somebody underwrite real estate going forward, especially if some of these mortgages are coming due, whether it be on the commercial side or the residential side? Yeah. How do you underwrite a mortgage if, in fact, you don't actually know what the occupancy could be, as well as what the retail need is going to be? Now, granted, you might have square footage, but if everybody's not showing up every day that employees are not in the office, what does that mean for the company selling the coffee and selling the subs and the catering and stuff like that? So effectively, how do you underwrite this particular wild card?
Yeah, actually, banks have been pulling back on that kind of lending, and it's pretty well documented now. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's all a part of it. The rise in interest rates, regulators are coming down on them. The empty office buildings. I mean, every other city. I mean, Miami seems to be somewhat immune from this, but I mean, you look at the disasters in San Francisco and Chicago and New York. I mean, those are where the huge commercial real estate downturns are happening right now. And no lender in their right mind is going to underwrite any project in those areas. And, I'm sure they're looking at Miami much the same way. They're being super careful and perhaps not even, really pulling back on any of the lending. I have to say the regional banks are the ones that do a lot of commercial real estate lending in Florida. So, and they're really under pressure from regulators. They're under pressure from their shareholders to be super careful about how they make loans, and trying to price commercial real estate right now is exactly right. You're exactly right. It's very tough. You don't know how many of those leases are going to be renewed. You have no idea how the retail is doing. I mean, you can find out, but it's not an easy thing to do.
Interesting. Okay, let's go on with story number 5. Story number 5, we're going to go to John Pacenti. John, this comes out of the Key Biscayne Independent. You wrote it. I'm going to ask you to provide some insights. I'll read the headline for a couple graphs, and then we'll take it from there. Headline: It's out of control. Condo reform gaining steam in Tallahassee. Before I go ahead and read the first couple graphs, let me just remind the audience, we had the collapse of a condominium on the Barrier Island in Miami-Dade County, a tower called Champlain Tower South. It collapsed. Nearly 100 people died. $1 billion was ultimately paid out to the families of those who ultimately perished. Legislation was changed or put in place in order to get insurance companies to take a chance financing some of these older buildings. But insurance companies have to pass along some of these costs that they had. So everyone's insurance is going up. We've also had hurricanes. We've had an increase in property values. Therefore, insurance companies have a lot more risk. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of contention right now in some of these associations that for the longest time were able to defer doing necessary rehab. But since the disaster that occurred in Surfside, the state's no longer allowing that. It's actually asking for reserves. So we've been documenting during the course of season 4 of our podcast a lot of internal strife that's going on in some of these associations. So that's the overview. So John, headline again: It's out of control. Condo reform gaining steam in Tallahassee. And here's the first couple graphs, and I want you to comment. After a workshop on condo fraud and corruption ended on Friday, dozens of residents of high rises throughout South Florida swarmed the podium. They wanted to tell their tale of woe about their condo board to either State Senator Jason Pizzo or Miami-Dade Assistant State Attorney John Pericles. Some talked about how condo boards got perks from vendors. Others spoke about how elections were stolen. Many talked about how they could not get financial records from the board. Both Pizzo and Pericles listened patiently at the Aventura event, but they didn't sugarcoat the situation during the 2-hour panel discussion. All leverage remains with the board. The law remains vague and weak, and the agency in charge of protecting condo residents is worse than toothless. It's apathetic, they said. John, why don't you give us some take about what the legislature might be willing to consider in our upcoming session in 2024, what the situation's like from maybe some of the people you're talking to who live in these condo associations, have had to deal with it, and just sort of set the scene and the climate for the audience.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to chew on this issue. Basically, the legislature has tried to deal with the aftermath of Surfside and trying to, deal with, the lack of reserves that some of these condo boards were, kind of kicking the can down the road there, and not doing maintenance and not doing what needed to be done. And now they're putting in some safeguards to make sure that we don't have another Surfside. That's basically what the last 2 sessions have been dealing with. But in the meantime, there have been these rogue homeowner associations and condo associations that continue to just basically go unchecked. And State Attorney Catherine Fernandez Rundle has really been kind of in the driver's seat here. She impaneled a grand jury a couple years ago, and it came back scathing, saying that the state is allowing rampant fraud, election fraud, padding vendor contracts, and also when residents said, "Hey, you're corrupt, you can't do this," then the board would turn their attorneys on those residents, and so the Department of Business and Professional Regulation is supposed to be kind of the have the condo residents back, but that agency has been less than toothless. In fact, it's almost been complicit. It has been complicit. Okay. And so now, this legislation, there was a bill that's already been, I think we're going to get multiple bills, both from Republicans and Democrats. This one bill is trying to move that over into the AG area, I mean, DBPR, what do they regulate? Nail manicurists,
masseuse,
as well as
masseuse, real estate brokers.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little unwieldy, and they basically just tell residents they're on their own, and the corrupt condo board know this. Now, let me just give you an example of how this has. I mean, of course, we have the situation down in Kendall, the homeowner association down there that was basically a criminal, has been charged with being a criminal organization. Here on Key Biscayne, we had a property manager stealing maintenance checks, just taking and putting out. She created a fake company, or is alleged of creating a fake company, and alleged to have funneled money into the residents' money into their account. And then the property management company would go to these residents and say, "Hey, you're in arrears. We're going to file a lien. And they're like, "What are you talking about? Here's my checks." Okay. Now, how emboldened are these boards? Well, when Representative Vicky Lopez held a town hall on the issue on Key Biscayne and said, "I'm coming with Condo 3.0 this session. We are going to fix this problem." The former president, who under her watch that this money was stolen from this board, said, "Oh, I don't think I agree with this. I don't agree with this so-called Condo 3.0. I think the problem is residents who are in arrears." And the fact is, the residents weren't in arrears. The money was being stolen from them. So that's just one little snippet of what's going on. And really, if I could, Tony Whitten, my boss, we would do nothing but really just dive into this arena, because it's we could basically do nothing but condo news, looking into these condo
John,
boards. But
so John, quick question. Back in the day during the Great Recession, when I was going after distressed condos, one of the things that we did is we were analyzing condos. We were rating them based on where they stood and things like that. We took a run at rating condominiums and making that information available, much like an appraisal. So if you're going into do an appraisal on a unit, you could also get like our assessment, kind of like you would get on Wall Street, like a credit rating agency type of situation. And one of the things we ran into is publicly available information. Shine a light. We are the Sunshine State. We have the Sunshine Law. John Gruss, who's on the podcast, he always talks about, listen, you want to deal with it, simply shine a light on it. You don't necessarily need more people to be doing stuff. Just make the records available. Make the records available. The market, at least from the first step, they might actually be able to sort of suss it out. And if a condo starts to free fall in value, because everybody knows there's some shady stuff going on, isn't that going to prompt a change in directors? Is that going to prompt a movement? So I guess my question to you, John, is Anything been spoken about simply making the financials readily available at the risk that some condos will simply go up in value because they're well run and some will go down, just like any company that's traded on Wall Street?
Well, there's going to be part of this proposed legislation, and it will be opposed by the law firms that represent these boards and these property management companies, is to require that there be a repository of financial information that is being posted on a website. Okay. And so, and are you ready for this? And if a resident goes, hey, I want to see the last, the last budget. I want to see the last time our accountants looked at our numbers. I want to see these reports. And the board says, no, we're not going to give it to you. And then the state, under this new law, goes, okay, give it to them now. And if they don't give it to them, those board members might be held criminally liable. That's what they're talking about now, because they're so tired of them hiding the information.
Well, just to throw it out there, in order to be a property manager, you got to get a license. Why not just deputize the property managers, much like the Fed deputizes the bank to know their customers? And if something pops up, then the state can always come in after the fact. So put the onus on the property manager. And if an association simply self-governs, it's just something they need to do. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
It's like the fox guarding the hen house. I mean, I don't know. A little bit. I mean, why, property managers, there's bad ones too, as John just pointed out. So I think if you made the financial records, condo financial records, a sunshine document publicly available for everyone to see, not just residents, but prospective buyers, investors, the public,
the lenders.
The lenders, anybody. And you wouldn't even have to ask for the board. They would have to disclose it publicly on this website. I mean, that would go a huge, long way to improving the situation, because then the light would be shined on those poorly performing condo associations and the ones that are not maintaining reserves, that are not that have clearly problem financial statements that are riddled with problems.
Well, are you ready for so this property manager, who was an employee of a property management company, what do you think that the condominium did with that property management company? Do you think that they fired them? No, they did not. So I haven't.
That's crazy.
So instead, I know. So instead, the residents oust in an election the president and the vice president that was there when this theft occurred, and then the new president then brings them back to run litigation committees and a debt committee and a board member who says, look, we need to bring in a forensic, we need to do a forensic audit. And they're like, no, we don't think so. And another thing is and then the police and prosecutors have a problem, because a lot of residents on Key Biscayne are South Americans that are here, and they don't even own the condominium, right? Maybe it's an LLC that owns it. They're working for a financial company. They'll do 5 or 7 years here in Miami, then maybe move on to Spain or wherever, back to and they're like, hey, we need you to do a police report, and they're like, I don't think so, no. And so they're like, well, we can't do anything if you're not going to file a police report. But we had come across somebody who had got about $26,000 had been stolen from him from this, he said, by this property manager.
Wow.
But
fascinating story, John. Anybody who's interested in condo associations, I would tell you, the work that John's doing over at Key Biscayne Independent, kvindependent.org. It's been fantastic on the association, John. So thank you for that insight. I'd also throw out before we go to the next story, keep in mind a lot of and I was on the condo board, I served on there. A lot of this is volunteer work. So you're not actually compensated. So that might be the issue because people aren't compensated. They sort of wet their beak elsewhere. So it's something to keep in mind. So let's go on to story number 6. Story number 6, we're going to go to John Fakler. Mr. Fakler, this story is coming out of South Florida Business Journal. I will read you the headline for a couple of graphs, and I want you to comment. Back in the day when you were a journalist, when you were writing my white collar crime and you do business stories, when you weren't doing restaurant reviews, you kind of get into like all the fraud that occurred in South Florida. So I figured you were the perfect person for this particular piece. Let me read the headline for a couple of graphs, and I want you to comment. Headline: South Florida ranks number 1 in the United States for credit card fraud, according to the FTC. And here we go with the first couple of graphs from Mr. Fakler, and I want you to comment. South Florida has been coined the credit card scam capital of the nation this year. That's according to U.S. Federal Trade Commission data analyzed by backgroundchecks.org that found that Miami, through the Port St. Lucie, Fort Lauderdale metropolitan area, ranked number 1 for credit card fraud, with about 333 credit card fraud reports per 100,000 people and 20,400 reports filed so far this year in 2023. Additionally, Sunshine State is home to the most credit card fraud in the nation, with nearly 171 reports per 100,000 residents. Orlando ranks number 5 and Tampa ranks number 10 in terms of metro areas, landing out of top 10 metro for the most credit card fraud. Researchers from the Public Records database owned by Newark, Delaware-based marketing business Wired Rhino LLC conducted an analysis of credit card fraud complaints in the 50 most populated metropolitan areas of the United States using FTC data from the Commission's Consumer Sentinel network. The ranking of MSAs and states was determined based on incidents of credit card fraud reports per 100,000. Mr. Fakler, let me get this straight. We're number 1 for like mortgage fraud. We're number 1 for like healthcare fraud. We now are our credit card fraud. We had the crypto bros. We all know what happened with FTX, with Bitcoin, FTX, the gentleman who had Sam Bankman-Fried, who had the name of his company, FTX, on the American Airlines arena. Mr. Fakler, at some point, why don't we just embrace it? And why would this be shocking? Why not just simply get pissed off if we're not number 1? Because we are dominating every single category, just like we used to in football, the region used to in football, in previous eras. So what say you, Mr. Fakler? And obviously, I'm being a little sarcastic here.
Sure. Well, this is not the Wild West. Listen, when I was leading investigative teams, it was all about money laundering. It was about bribery and corruption, insurance, Medicare fraud, all these other frauds. I don't ever remember doing a project related to credit card fraud. So this must be a fairly new phenomenon. Technically, the FTC classifies this as identity theft under that category, which is a major fraud. But back in the day, I really would be curious to see what the dollar numbers are on the fraud compared to the other types of fraud. I mean, this is South Florida. We do everything here. I mean, we do all kinds of frauds. It's kind of like George Costanza from the Seinfeld. He goes, "I got all the insecurities. I got everything." Well, South Florida's got every fraud imaginable. But again, I'd like to drill deeper on this to see how this compares monetarily with the other types of frauds, because that's a shocking thing. Not that it's happening in South Florida, but because the numbers are so high. It's dramatic.
And in your 20 plus years when you were a journalist, Mr. Fakler, did anybody ever give you any reason why it all occurs down here? Is it the fact that it's such a transient place? Generally speaking, 1 in 4 people is actually born in Florida. A lot of people that I know, they come for 3 or 5 years and then they sort of move along. Is it the transient aspect? Is it the fact that from a multicultural perspective, roughly 1 in 3 residents was born in a foreign country and is now living here based on U.S. Census data? People are just moving around and there's not generations. Do you think that's it, Mr. Fakler?
Yeah.
Or is it simply an opportunity?
It's a great question. I think the transient nature of South Florida is one thing. I think the elderly population, we have a lot of pensioners here, and you see a lot of Social Security fraud. And I think a lot of these fraudsters are targeting Florida specifically because you got this huge population of elderly people. They're very vulnerable. They're not that sharp. They're vulnerable to all these scams. So I think that plays into it too. Medicare, for example, the Medicare fraud. So, there's a couple of issues that are very, South Florida specific, let's say. that I think makes the Floridians very vulnerable to these scams.
Wow, interesting. Well, it's like they say, why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. So great discussion, Mr. Fakler. I want to thank everybody for participating in the Miami Reporters Roundtable podcast this particular week. Let me thank John Gruss. He was a journalist for over 25 years. Right now, he has a public relations marketing firm called Gruss Communications. Check out his website, GrussPR.com, GRUSSPR.com. You can also get him on X, which is formerly Twitter. Get him at John Gruss, JeanGruss. Want to thank Mr. Fakler. John Fakler was a journalist for over 20 years. Wrote about white-collar crime. He did business stories. He also did restaurant reviews. Right now, Mr. Fakler is a consultant. If you want to get a hold of Mr. Fakler on X, which is formerly Twitter, get him at JT Fakler, Fakler. And I want to thank John Pacenti. He made his maiden voyage. I hope it wasn't too rough, John. You did a fantastic job. You work over the Key Biscayne Independent. Anybody wants to check out the website, go to kbindependent.org, kbindependent.org. And if you want to get them on X, which is formerly Twitter, get them at JPACENTI. And I'm Peter Zalewski of Condo Vultures. If you have any comments for us, you want to compliment, you want to criticize, get us at Miami RRP, which stands for Miami Reporters Roundtable Podcast. And let me remind you, if you look at like we do at our journalists as superheroes, maybe pick up some merch, pick up a coffee mug, pick up a t-shirt. You can get a shower curtain with Mr. Fakler on it. Simply go to condovultures.com. There's a merch tab. Simply go there. You'll see all the different products, that we have available. And then finally, be sure to like us be sure to subscribe. So until next time, hope everybody takes care of yourself and we'll catch up soon. Ciao, ciao.
It's a simple formula and it works. Buy low, sell high. We're Condo Vultures, and when it comes to your real estate, we help you buy low. At Condo Vultures, we represent the buyer, and now's the time to buy. Log on to condovultures.com for more information. Condovultures.com. And remember, before you sell high, you have to buy low. Featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, 60 Minutes, and Time Magazine. Condo Vultures Realty, a licensed Florida real estate brokerage capitalizing on the condo correction since 2006.
This is Peter Zalewski of the Condo Vultures podcast. Before I started doing these podcasts, I was in the business of being a licensed real estate broker, a contributing columnist for the Miami Herald, as well as the Miami Real Deal, but also extra witness work in consulting. So if you are looking for an expert witness, or if you're looking for consulting services, a straight talk perspective as to what's going on in a particular marketplace, a building, or what happened previously, for whatever your situation is, whether you are an attorney, whether you are a institutional fund looking to invest, or whether you're a lender who's trying to come up with some sort of strategy and approach for your lending committee going forward, I just might be able to help you. To get a hold of me, please reach out to Peter at condovultures.com. That's Peter at condovultures.com, or give me a call to the office at 305-865-5859, 305-865-5859.